Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey, what's going on, gentlemen? This is Lukas Resheske, and this is the first week content of the Copywriting Mentorship program. This is probably the most important content we're going to go through this entire time for these 12 weeks. It's the big four, and these are the four pillars to writing any kind of really good converting copy. You can take this to an advertorial. You can take this to a VSL. You can take it to a sales letter, to a blog post, to an ad, whatever you need to do in the copywriting world. You can apply these big four pillars to it, and it will be more successful. If you don't have the big four pillars, then your copy will more than likely fail. And that's because these four pillars make up the foundation of what a sales message is supposed to accomplish and supposed to communicate. So without further ado, we are going to jump into the content. And on top of that, I'm going to be jumping in and out of the presentation and going online to showing you some things and showing some examples. So if any questions come up, make sure to write them down while you're looking at this training and bring them to the Q&A calls at Wednesday at 9 a.m. Again, Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time are the Q&A calls. So if you have questions, go ahead and bring them up then. Write them down so you don't forget, because this is important stuff. All right, let's jump right in. The first of the big four pillars is the target market. So we're going to ask a couple questions here, and we're going to start trying to narrow down who the target market is for the copy piece that you're writing. The first question, who exactly are you trying to reach with the copy? So you're trying to think about the person who would be most likely to buy the product and most likely to have the problem that you're discussing, be looking for the solutions that you're trying to provide, maybe even have the desire or identity problems that certain markets have. Who exactly are you trying to reach? An example would be if you were trying to reach mothers who aren't happy with the way their hair looks because they're too stressed and they're not sleeping enough, and so you want to sell them a hair supplement in order to help their hair. That's who you're trying to target specifically, mothers with frazzled hair who want to buy a hair supplement to make their hair look better. Another example, if you're trying to get to men who have ED, you need to look specifically at the type of demographics and psychographics of who you're targeting and why they want to cure that and what the biggest problems are. Who exactly are you trying to reach? Get very, very specific. The more specific you can be, the more effective your copy is going to be. Like answering questions, what do they look like? What do they do every day? What do they read, watch, and listen to every single day? Where do they live? What are their hobbies? All of those questions are very important, and although they might not seem directly related to the copy, they absolutely are. They help you find stories that you can tell to the audience that they're going to relate to. For example, if you're trying to relate to a 55-year-old man, you're not going to make references to today's music. You're going to make references to music that was popular in the 70s and the 80s and the 60s for some of the older ones. So if you know who your target market is, then you can relate to them at a better level, at an easier level, at a more effective level. Because if you don't relate to them or you make some sort of comment or story that they're not going to relate to, they leave your copy immediately. That's what happens with a lot of unsuccessful copy. Again, what do they look like? What do they wear every day? Why do they dress like that? We'll get into why in here in a second, but what do they do every day? Do they wake up? Do they hit an alarm at 6 a.m. and commute to work? Are they in the car for an hour? Do they stay at home with their 3 kids? Do they live on their own somewhere? What do they read? Are they reading Kindles? Are they reading physical books? Are they reading blogs and forums and Reddit and Facebook? What are they reading? What are they watching? Are they on YouTube? Are they on Netflix? Are they on HBO? Do they have cable TV? What are they watching? What are they paying attention to? What are they listening to? Do they listen to the normal radio? Do they listen to NPR? Do they listen to local radio? Do they listen to podcasts? Do they listen to audiobooks? What are they listening to? What are they tuning into? Where do they live? Again, if somebody lives in Florida, but you're trying to sell a parka, it's not going to be a good target market. If somebody lives in Alaska and you're trying to sell a beach towel, same problem. Where do they live? Does it matter? Does it matter to what you're trying to sell where they live? And answer that question. What are their hobbies? What does this particular market like to do? If you're trying to sell something that solves a problem for them, is it in the hobby that you're trying to solve? or is the problem in the hobby that you're trying to solve? Or perhaps you can even link to the hobby. Maybe you're marketing to survivalists and you are trying to sell them a survival tool, but you know that most survivalists have hobbies that involve guns. Most survivalists have hobbies that involve canning or homesteading, things like that. Finding out who this person is incredibly, incredibly important. And then something that I do personally as a copywriter that I don't see a lot of copywriters doing is you start asking why on each one of these questions. Why are you trying to reach them? Why do they do what they do? Why do they read, listen, and watch what they do? Why do they live where they live? And so on and so on. If you're asking yourself why they do those things, it starts to get you in their mindset. It starts to get you into where they live every single day in their head. Why are you trying to reach them? Well, because they have a problem. Okay, how do they think about the problem? Why do they think it's a problem? Do they even think it's a problem? Are they looking for solutions or not? Why do they do what they do? Why do they wake up at 6 a.m. and travel into the city? Why do they stay home with their kids? Are they happy about that? Are they not happy about that? The why is extremely important to get you into the prospect's shoes. We're going to talk a little bit more about other ways to get into this target market and do some good research, and then I'll hop out of the presentation and show you some examples. But the most important thing is ask yourself who they are and get really, really detailed. This is like demographic information. And then ask yourself why they are the way they are, and you'll get more detail and better into their shoes to do it. Let's talk about 3 things that you also want to put into your target market research. Their beliefs. What do they believe to be true? What do they disbelieve? What do they love? What do they hate? Who do they trust? And who do they not trust? All of these are deep psychological questions that you have to answer about your target market. And each one of these is extremely powerful. What do they believe to be true? If that's different from what you believe to be true, then find out what they personally think and remove yourself from it. The worst thing you can possibly do as a copywriter is try to put yourself, your ego, into their shoes. What you're really trying to do is get into their shoes and into their head. Throw your ego out the door. So what do they believe to be true? And ask why on every single one of these things. Ask why for greater insight. Why do they believe that to be true? Why do they disbelieve certain things? What is the reason? Why do they love the things that they love? Why do they hate the things that they hate? Why do they trust the people that they trust? And why do they not trust the people they don't trust? This why question is going to help you dig way, way deeper. This is much deeper than a customer avatar where you're picking out some demographics and you're calling her Sally and putting a fake picture that you found on Google Images up there and trying to figure out who you're writing to. This is truly and deeply diving into the person that you are writing the copy to. And if you do this over and over and over again, you're going to start noticing that it's much more effective for you to slip into the role of copywriter no matter what you're writing for. So if your goal is to be a freelancer, asking these why questions is what is going to shift you from just a good copywriter who can follow a template they found on the internet and a great copywriter who actually brings an amazing amount of value to their clients. And if you're a business owner and you're watching this, then you want to jump into the why of your target market as deeply as possible, because that's going to allow you to find the reasons that they're going to purchase your product or purchase your solution or purchase your service. The deeper you can get, the better. Again, beliefs. The second thing is desires. We're going to talk deeper about desires in a minute, but right now, the service level desires. What do they like? What do they dislike? What are their goals? And what don't they care about? So if they have certain goals in their life, they might be simple goals, they might be complex goals, they might be big goals, little goals, doesn't matter. What are they? You want to find out what they are. Are they public? Are they private? So are they ones that they brag about, or are they ones that they keep to themselves and want to do on their own? And what don't they care about? If you're trying to tell them a story about something that has zero relevance, for example, if you're trying to sell relationship advice to women, and you start talking about football and scores and numbers and ESPN, the vast majority of your audience is going to be alienated and they're not going to care about it. You might laugh and say that that's crazy, but I actually have multiple people who've tried to sell dating advice to women who start using sports analogies. And I've had the flip side as well, where women were trying to sell dating advice to men, and they patronize them by talking about wrenches and other different things. So you have to know what they care about and what they don't care about and why. Again, ask why on every single one of these things and dig super, super deep. You want to find that subconscious reason that they're doing all of this stuff. Third thing is identification. What do they identify as? And this isn't just straight, gay, male, female, whatever. This is not a LGBTQ question. This is their personal identity. What do they identify as? Are they a conservative? Are they a liberal? Are they a progressive? Are they a Canadian, a United States soldier? What are they? What do they identify as? What is part of their identity? And then, on top of that, what do they identify against? Specifically, what do they stand against? If they're conservative, are they so conservative that they hate all liberals and they post a lot of anti-liberal stuff on their Facebook page? If they're liberal, are they pro Bernie Sanders or are they pro Hillary, or do they not care? What do they stand against is almost more important as what they identify as, because most people define themselves by what they identify against. You'll notice this in a lot of different markets, especially consumer markets. All people do it. They like to position themselves against something before they identify as something. So what do they consider important about their identity versus expendable to their identity? Now I'm going to use another political example, but this is applicable to everything. If they consider something important to their identity to be the question about abortion and their answer to that particular question, whether it's pro-life or pro-choice, that is something they consider important to their identity. However, as a liberal or a conservative with that particular piece of their identity, it might be expendable to them to disagree or agree about tax policy or foreign policy or something like that. If they have a specific piece of their identity that they care about more than others, that's going to matter to your copy, and that's going to matter what stories you tell them and how you communicate with them in your copy. So what do they consider important about their identity versus expendable to their identity? Now, just realize we're actually going through this pretty quick, and I'm going to try to go through it as quick as possible so you don't have to waste time. You can go back through these videos and look at some of these sentences, and I will also share the outline of this PowerPoint so that you'll have everything in a document form and you can look at some of these questions, because every single one of these questions is important to ask yourself when you are trying to nail down your target market. So let's dive back more into identification. Again, expendable versus important. Also, think about what brands they use to identify themselves with or position themselves against. What sort of people, like celebrities or industry specialists or experts or authorities or authors, whatever, the type of people who they would identify with or against, and the type of products that help them create and reinforce their identity. So again, brands and products are slightly different. Like brands, maybe they're a really, really big Nike fan. More than likely, you're going to find some luxury brands, like whether they aspire to it or they must buy it, things like Gucci and all the different luxury brands. Those kinds of things help identify people and help them show the world who they are. But other products, so let's say they're a Ford versus a Chevy driver, or a Dodge versus a Chevy driver. Those types of products help them identify who they are and help them create and reinforce their identity. And there's also ways that they say, I will never buy from Walmart. I will never buy from Target, or I will never buy from Ford. I will never buy from Nike. Things that they can position their identity against for whatever reason. All of these questions are extremely important to understanding your target market. Let's go a little bit deeper into demographics. So demographics, in my opinion as a copywriter, especially nowadays with the age of the internet and search research, they are less important than they used to be back when lists mattered and mailing to specific zip codes or mailing addresses, things like that. But the purpose they do serve is to help you target your best customers and prospects. So it's important to still understand them. If you understand your target market and you're really building this great psychological profile of the person that you're trying to target, it's still important to be able to find them, whether you're using a list on Facebook, you're using a Nextmark email list, whatever you're trying to do to find the people that you're working with your client or on your business. The demographics are how most lists are sorted. And so once you've gotten the psychological profile, it's important to also build out the tentative demographic profile, or at the very least, compile a bunch of demographics together that all meet your psychological profile of these customers. So if you found that 35-year-old moms with 2 kids resonate with your message at the same extent that 25-year-old single males resonate with your message, you can send the marketing message to both of them, but it's important that you understand the demographics so that you're not sending it to a 45-year-old woman with no kids or a 35-year-old man with 10 kids, whatever it happens to be. Make sure those demographics are very clear and specific when you're doing this, and keep track of them because they'll change, they'll shift. Your audience might grow older or younger or whatever happens, but it will help you target them in almost every single list that you're going to find out there in the market. Now let's talk about psychographics. This is what I personally feel like is more important. So all the questions that we just talked about above will help you create that psychographic profile of your audience. Asking those questions about your specific person will help you build that understanding of who they are. Like I said, and the reason I'm just giving you this high level stuff and not like specific step 1, step 2, step 3 is because there is no right way to do it. The right way to do it is the way that makes sense for you based on how you learn, how you research, and how you write. So if you are a reader like me, I've got anywhere from 20 to 30 books on my desk at any one time and a stack of newspapers. I'm a reader. I like to read. That's how I assimilate information. Some people like to watch video. Some people listen to podcasts. Some people like to talk to people back and forth, either on the phone or out on a stage or whatever. Whatever is your way for gathering this information and then processing it and keeping it together, that's the right way. Because you as a copywriter will use your unique gifts to find out what this psychological profile is for your audience. Now, I can always give you tips and tricks on how I sort stuff or how I research stuff, and that's going to be valuable. We're going to go through that later in the course. But for this bigger stuff, this bigger picture stuff, I want you guys to start creating your own systems rather than relying on others that have been created. The templates that have been created are templates that were useful for the person who created them. They're not necessarily useful for you. They might help jog your memory. They might help get you started somewhere. But at the end of the day, transitioning from a good copywriter or a mediocre copywriter to a great copywriter, you must create your own systems, you must create your own templates, and you must create your own workflow and way of doing things. That's something that I want to help empower you to do in this course. And I'm obviously open to talking about it at all the Q&A calls and in the Facebook group. But start thinking about that now. It's important to start getting that in your head and start distilling what your own personal systems are. So let's go over a couple what if type situations. So this is something that you're probably going to encounter all the time, either as a freelancer or as a business owner who launches new products. You've got a brand new offer and a brand new product. What happens? So the first thing is you want to research your competitors. We're going to go down these big 4 pillars, and you're going to find out that market sophistication is what your competitors are doing. And it'll give you kind of the stages of market sophistication and how to put your product into wherever it's at. But at a high level right now, with the target market research, if you've got a brand new offer, a new product, the first place you want to go is your competitors. You want to find out what they're selling it for as far as price point, what's in the funnel, what's not in the funnel. Go to direct competitors if you have any, someone selling almost the same thing or exactly the same thing as what you're selling or trying to sell. And indirect competitors, people who sell to the same market but sell a different type of product or a different type of service or whatever it happens to be. The difference would be if you sell bike tires and somebody else sells bike frames, you're still selling to the same person, but they're selling completely different things, and so you can get a better feel for the market. And the second thing you want to do when you're testing a brand new offer and a brand new product is to do what I call hyper niching. Now, this is taking what niche you think you're in. Maybe you think you're selling to bicycle enthusiasts, and niche that down like crazy. If you're selling to bicycle enthusiasts and you're selling bike parts, then hyper niching is taking bike enthusiasts and only marketing your new offer and product to bike enthusiasts who are between the ages of 20 and 35 in Boulder, Colorado. That's hyper niching. The reason being, you limit your exposure to risk When you do that, if your offer sucks, only a few people are going to see it, and you limit your exposure to brand reputation problems. So if you put an offer out into the world and you spend a lot of money or time or energy putting it out and nobody wants it in crickets, unfortunately, in this day and age, a lot of people are going to see it and they will remember it, especially if you keep the same brand name, you keep trying to launch different things. You've probably experienced this when you've seen people in the industry trying to launch things that didn't work, or starting one thing and then all of a sudden teaching another thing, whatever it happens to be. Hyper niching is a way to protect yourself. So there's two ways to do it. You bring it down to a super, super tight audience and you limit your risk by only offering a specific product to that audience. If that doesn't make sense, or if you need more clarification, write down some questions and throw it up on and show up on the Q&A calls. But we're going to go down into a second possible what to do if. What to do if you don't know the market at all. So as a freelancer, you're going to run into this more often than a business owner, because as a business owner, you have the benefit of sitting in the same market and analyzing the same market for a long period of time. Freelancers don't really have that luxury. So if you don't know the market, these are the steps that I would do personally and what I do when I'm writing for clients. The first thing is immersion. You want to get immersed in what your target market is doing every day. If they're in certain Facebook groups, if they're in certain forums, if they surf Reddit every day, find out where those places are just by doing some quick keyword searching and asking some questions after you've done your psychological questioning of the target market. Start looking around, start pretending you are one of those people and immerse yourself in that community. That alone is going to show you some massive insights. And it's also going to dispel a lot of myths that you probably already have about the market, because it's really, really hard for humans in general and copywriters to take themselves out of the equation in the beginning when they haven't immersed themselves. And so you're probably going to have these preconceived notions about all your different markets. And the immersion is the key, where you jump into those markets and you really see, okay, what's going on? If you listen to the same podcasts as them, if you watch the same Netflix shows as them, if you watch the same HBO shows as them, if you read the same books that they're reading, frequent the same forums, go on the same Reddit pages, read the same Amazon products and reviews, see what they're buying, see what the competitors are selling, things like that. Immerse yourself in the market and become more knowledgeable about that market every single time you do it. The second way to do it is to interview your target market. And what I mean by this is you can either survey them at a large scale. If you're working with a client and they have an email list or a database of names, there are specific ways that you can survey them and get the right information for you as a copywriter or as a business owner, but also interviewing them, going out on the street, talking with them at the bar, going to a coffee shop, going to a library, asking a few of your friends who you know are in the target market, asking your friends if they know friends who are in the target market, getting on the phone with people. And at the end, what you can do, and what I have done in the past, you can cold call people who are in the market and ask them questions. There's a couple specific tactics you can use for that if you want. One of them is pretend to be a podcast owner, especially if you're talking with anyone who likes celebrity or wants to be important. You can pretend to be a podcast owner and you can ask to interview them for a podcast. You can ask to be interviewing them as a reporter. You can just straight up say, hey, I'm doing research and I would love your opinion, because people love to give their opinions. Interviews are very, very powerful. The key is to do more than 10 if you're doing them in person, and to get more than 100 responses if you're doing surveys or things like that at a larger scale. Because you don't want to take the word of one person. You want to find common trends that more than a dozen or more than 100 people all share. Because one person is very specific and you're going to pick up on the wrong things. But a big bulk of data will give you a much better idea of what that target market is into and help you answer some of those questions that we talked about earlier. Now, one very specific way of doing surveys is one that my mentor, Ryan Levesque, is teaching, which is called the deep dive survey. I can do a specific, he's launching his course, but the deep dive survey is very specific and very technical. I can do a separate training on that one. If you guys have questions, ask them in the Q&A and I will be happy to dive in there. But for now, just know that the deep dive survey is something that you send to either an email list or to a cold traffic landing page, where you're asking them, instead of, hey, what do you want? Or, hey, what do you think about this? The typical survey stuff. Instead, you're asking them a question that says, what is your number one single biggest challenge with X, whatever your particular topic or keyword is. What is your number one single biggest challenge with this? And you can ask some questions around that if you want to, like what is your age, what is your gender, what is your current status in work, what is your preference for this and that. You can gather more information around the survey, but the most important question in a deep dive survey is what is your number one single biggest challenge with X? That answer is going to get you super deep into their psychology because most people who are in pain will give you a ton of answers. The second important thing to understand about deep dive surveys is that if you do it effectively and you're sending it out to a client, you could get 100 or so, or 200 or 500 or 1,000 responses, depending on the size of the list. Those responses will come in two flavors. They will come in short and many, which means that the answer will be shorter, but there will be many of the same answer. And they will come in long, but few. The long but few answers, the ones where people just type their and pour their heart out into the survey box, those are the ones you pay attention to, not the short and frequent. The reason being is frequently asked questions are frequently answered questions, versus the longer answers are the ones where people have a true pain, a deep pain that they haven't been able to fix yet. Also, I use a technique called Amazon hacking to get about 50% of the deep dive survey effectiveness. I can show you guys that tactic. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and do that real quick right now. So we'll exit out of the PowerPoint and we're going to hop into the internet. So taking an idea like fitness, and you're selling a fitness product and niching down into, let's call it fitness for brides-to-be. People who are going to be married soon, and they're looking to lose some weight so they can look better in their wedding dress. So women who are about to be married within 3 to 6 months who are interested in looking better in their wedding dress. So let's go to Amazon. And I will increase some of this stuff. Oh, that's right. It's Prime Day. So we're going to look up, let's see, get fit for wedding. See what pops up there. In all 30 departments, let's talk about reference ebooks real quick. Nothing? All right. Dig around, see if we can't find anything. Fitness for wedding. Nope, nothing. Wedding fitness. There we go. Wedding fitness and books. So we're starting to dive in here. Radiant Bride, Let's Dance, gorgeous wedding hairstyles, wedding weight loss solution, the wedding dress, 2020 diet. Starting to look at some of these things here. What we're looking for is how far they are up on these result lists, because that tells you how good they are and how many people have bought it recently. Then we're looking over here for reviews. Anything over 10 is good. Anything over 50 is amazing. Anything over 100 is something you really want to pay attention to, if it's in your actual demographic. So this one's good. Let's go here real quick. Radiant Bride by Alexis Wolfer. Paperback and Kindle, looks like it's been sold a lot. 18 customer reviews. And then also customers who bought this item have bought very similar items in here. So you can look for combinations, things like that. But what we're looking for as far as customer research is down here in the reviews. And we're going to look for the 5 stars, the 1 stars, and the 3 stars. So it looks like this person has a lot of 5-star reviews, which means they probably asked their email list or their following to give them 5-star reviews because they're very short. There's not a whole lot of substance to them. But when you look at them, you can start seeing some things that might be important. A doable timeline to prepare, showing off your ring properly, not much of a hangover, all that kind of stuff, how to prepare yourself to fit into the dress after the bachelorette party. Some of the things that you dig in here psychologically are going to teach you what the person is thinking about, what your target market is, how they consider themselves, where they're at, what their identity is, what their problems are, what their solutions are, things like that. And you start digging into these reviews, and it will show you a lot of really powerful stuff. Now, this one's not the best example because there's only 18 reviews and it looks like they're all 5 stars. So if we go back and we look at the option that had 60. So there's hairstyles, there's more hairstyles. All right, 52, buff brides. Let's look at this one. Let's dive in here. There's quite a few 5-star reviews, but there are no 1 stars, but other ones as well. So let me zoom in here because this is going to create, this screen is pretty big. Let's see. I've been doing buff brides workout for 1.5 weeks now. I feel more energetic and well buff. Okay. Outcomes, things that they want. Exercise groups, butt, arms, back, and abs are those things that they want. Yesterday, my pants kept slipping down. The book assumes you have very little time and little space to work out. I would rather eat a bag of broken glass than exercise. That is a great little phrase you can pick out and put in your copy if you're a copywriter. Would you rather eat a broken bag of glass than exercise? Well, this no exercise diet plan to get you ready for your wedding is the right answer for you. Let's see, type construction of the book is irrelevant, high impact enough to get results, easy enough to keep my interest, things like that. This is the first review, 4 stars. So finding little nuggets like this, putting them into an Excel document or into a Word document and just collecting them as part of your research is going to be incredibly powerful for you getting the first of the 4 pillars, which is the target market, down as much as possible. Hopefully this was helpful. This is how I Amazon hack if you don't have a email list that you can send a deep dive survey to, and if you aren't finding much results when you go to Reddit or forums or podcasts or anything like that. This is a little hack that I use, especially when I'm on a time crunch. So let us go back and start in on the next what if on the target market, and then we'll jump into the next thing. So what happens if you get it wrong? As a copywriter, as a business owner, you're going to put all your effort into writing the right kind of copy, and you're going to put a ton of work into it. You still might get it wrong. That's the way business is. Things move really fast, especially nowadays. So what happens when you do? The first thing you do is test. You have to get as much data as possible. Now, if you're on a budget, if your client's on a budget, this might be more difficult than it would be with a higher budget because you don't have as many tools, as much analytics, a person who can't pull data out of Google Analytics or your Facebook ads or your heat maps and things like that. But I'm going to kind of explain to you what you can use each of these analytic tools for, and what some of the biggest things you can notice about your copy are for the biggest wins. So a heat map is essentially a software that tracks where people are looking and clicking on a web page. Now, the more simple ones are just looking for clicks, and they can also track mouse movement. So if you see my mouse on the screen here, a heat map would be creating a circle if a lot of people were making this circle with their mouse. Some people like to underline words that matter to them with their mouse when they read. Some people like to subvocalize. Heat maps will also show you where people spend the most time on the page. So if you're scrolling through a sales page, you can see where people stop. You can see where people don't read because nobody's there. Heat maps are really, really powerful, and one of the most powerful tools you can have as a copywriter for static copy, sales pages, landing pages, things like that, lead magnets that get absorbed if they're hosted online, videos, things like that. Heat maps are extremely important if you're doing any sort of static copy or sort of website audits. They're also a little bit more expensive to maintain, and they're also a little bit complicated to set up in the first place and understand. So if you've never worked with them before, I would suggest looking some videos up on YouTube to see how they work, especially depending on what software you get. So one of the things that you can research very easily, and what almost every single website has, is a bounce rate. A bounce rate is the quantity of people in a percentage who leave the page within a certain amount of time. If you're sending traffic to a sales page, excuse me a moment. If you're sending traffic to a sales page, then if they hit the sales page and there is a very, very high bounce rate, like within the 80 or 90% range, then you can bet that one of your biggest problems is a mismatch between your ad copy or whatever caused them to get that click and the initial impact of the page, whether it's the headline or if there's a video that automatically plays, something like that. There's a disconnect between that immediate action. So if you are sending traffic from an ad or an advertorial or a blog post, and somebody clicks a link and they go to the sales page, and there's a very, very high bounce rate on the sales page, then you have something wrong with the initial click. They're not getting what they expected when they click it. You notice this a lot with some bait and switch type stuff where people think they're going to another article, or they think they're going to a video and they go to a sales page, or it auto plays or something like that. Bait and switch tactics have extremely high bounce rates. And so you can kind of be the copywriter to decide if you want to use those based on conversions. I would not recommend using bait and switch tactics at all. So that's what the bounce rates are. You can also, within bounce rates, look at time on page. So if people are spending a significant amount of time on your page, but the conversions are low, then you can start looking at things like, is the offer proper? Do all the buttons work? Obviously people are sticking around to listen and read. However, they're not buying. So there's a problem with the mechanism that's causing the conversion. All of these things, all this data can start teaching you what's wrong with your page when you look at it. And some are cheaper than others. Again, clicks, you're going to be able to measure clicks no matter what you use on the internet. And so make sure you have some sort of metric there. And the number of clicks tells you how interested somebody is based on the audience you're applying it to. That's pretty easy to do. Facebook does it, Google does it, blogs do it, Google Analytics does it. Everybody measures clicks. So you can guess the interest level based on the number of impressions, which is the number of people who see the page, to the number of clicks, people who actually click on the thing you want them to click. There'll be a percentage there, and depending on your market, it's drastically different, but you can still measure it, and it's one of the easiest and cheapest things to measure. So VSL and webinar watch time. Now, a lot of people are here because they want to learn how to write VSLs, they want to learn how to write webinars, and those things are much more complicated to track because every second there is something going on the screen. There's sound, there's voiceover, there's PowerPoint, there's other distractions. And so you're trying to take someone through a sales message over a period of time. One of the things that you want to focus on with a VSL or a webinar is the watch time. How long are people watching? What's the percentage of people who watch the entire way through versus show up? Where are they dropping? A lot of services like Wistia and Vimeo will show you analytics of where people drop off. Other analytics software for video will also let you do this. And so you can see it kind of as a parabolic curve where people are dropping off of your video. If there's a drastic drop off at one point, you go to that video, or you go to that part of the video and you find out what happened. Like, did you say something that didn't resonate? Did you say something that offended people? What is it? You can narrow in on the problem much easier when you have watch time analytics and drop point analytics. So if you are doing work with a client, or if you're a business owner who has VSLs or webinars and something's not working right, I would start installing this software and start looking where people are dropping off, how many people are dropping off in the first place. Just by looking at watch time analytics, I took one of my clients I essentially doubled his conversion simply by changing the first 30 seconds of the video because I noticed that his watching was going way down in the first 30 seconds. We were able to double his conversion simply by keeping more people on the webinar by changing the first 30 seconds. It's that important. And it's that kind of difference that you make for your clients that turns you from a good copywriter to a great copywriter. Also, if you get it wrong and you have their information, you can send out non-buyer emails and do other non-buyer interviews, things like that. A non-buyer email is when you send it out to them and you say, hey, I noticed you didn't pick up product X. Would you mind telling me why? There's other ways to do it. Ryan Levesque, my mentor, has a great way of doing it, which is called the Do You Hate Me email. He sends out an email with that as the headline or something softer if you're in a softer market, and basically says, do you hate me? And then says, hey, I noticed you didn't pick up my product. I was just wondering if you hate me, smiley face. If you, please let me know what I did wrong or how I can improve later or what the reason is for buying or for not buying the product. That will give you a ton of information if you can get people to click on it and actually tell you the right story. So consider non-buyer emails and consider non-buyer interviews where you call them and say, hey, I noticed you didn't pick this up. I'm not trying to sell it to you right now, but I'm just wondering why you didn't. Those interviews will give you a absolute gold mine. And here's why. Nobody who is, unless they're super pissed off for some reason, Somebody who's apathetic or just doesn't want to buy your product is never going to come out and tell you that why they didn't buy your product. They're just going to take their reason and they're going to walk away silent, and you will never hear from them unless you reach out proactively. So consider that as part of your what to do if you get it wrong type testing. Now that's target market. We're 40 minutes in and we've gone through one of the pillars. If you have questions, write them down, come to the Q&A calls and ask those questions, because if it's specific to your market, if it's specific to a client that you have right now or that you're trying to get, if it's specific to something that you don't get about the training, come to the Q&A calls. That is what they are for. You have to come to those things and ask the questions specific to you, because people learn differently. Staring at a PowerPoint, listening to me talk might not be the way you learn. Maybe you need to knock it around with me on the Q&A calls. So do that, write them down, don't forget them, and keep them with you when we do those Q&A calls on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Let's go into the second pillar right now. The second pillar of the big four pillars are what I call the primal desires. Now, a really easy way to remember what the primal desires are in your marketplace are the 7 deadly sins of the Catholic Church, of the Catholic tradition, Christianity, if you're familiar with any of that. Those 7 deadly sins are corresponding to the vast, vast majority of most people's primal desires. Now, when I say primal, I mean subconscious, I mean unarticulated, and usually not admitted to. Which means that you can't go in your copy and say, hey, are you a proudful badass? Or are you somebody who's lustful? It doesn't work that way. But they are subconscious, they are unarticulated, and they're not admitted to, but they are still very, very real. And most of the time, there is one particular primal desire and a couple other ones that are included whenever you're selling a solution to a problem. So let's go over those in detail. Greed. Greed, in a nutshell, is the desire, the primal desire for more, whatever more is for them. Sometimes it's more money. Sometimes it's more power. Sometimes it's more stuff, like a bigger house or a bigger car or a hotter girlfriend or a hotter boyfriend or whatever it is. Greed is a desire for more, something that they don't have right now that they want to get more of. That's something that if you think, okay, I'm in a market where greed is a primary motivator. Let's say you're in Forex. You're selling a Forex product for Forex investing. Most of the people in there are greed motivated. They desire more. They're willing to take risks in order to get more because they just have to bet a little bit and get a ton. If your market is a greed market, which we can talk about in the Q&A calls, we can talk about on the hot seats, then if you sell them more, they're going to be listening to you. They're going to be wanting to hear how they can get more of whatever it is that they want. Second thing, sloth. Sloth is the desire for ease, making it easy for people, making it not as difficult as it should be, giving them some sort of hack, some sort of shortcut, some sort of secret, some sort of insider information. The easier you make it for them, the more you're going to intensify the desire for people who their primary desire is sloth. You see this a lot in internet marketing. You see this a lot with people who also have greed as a primary motivator. Sloth sometimes comes with that, where they want to get more, but they don't want to work too hard for it. You notice that in the internet marketing niches. You notice that in investing niches, things like that. So again, come to me if you have questions about this, but sloth is the desire for ease. And if that's their primary motivator, like this is the easiest push button software you'll ever find to make $100 a day, then you hit the nail on the head by hitting on the ease of use. Lust. Lust is the desire for sex, love, and affection. So this is most applicable or most specific to like a pickup artist market, or a dating advice market for women where they want love and they want affection. Those are the lust primary desires. Those are the ones where they want that core feeling of being connected and loved, or they want that core driver of sex if they're male or if they're, dominated by that kind of desire. So when you're selling products that have that primal desire, you have to hit on it hard, because that is one of the things that is often the only thing on their mind. Pride. Pride is a pretty common one for most of for most products, and it's a desire for superiority. Now, this is different from greed, because greed is more singular. It's more like, I want more of this because I want more of it. It's a desire, it's an addiction, something like that. The pride one is where they're looking for superiority over other people in order to reinforce their own self-worth. And so pride is one where you can sell them on being better than others, or you can sell them on being the top dog, and it doesn't necessarily have to make them more wealthy or more fit. It just has to make them superior to others, superior in the eyes of others, and they'll gain some sort of significance from it. So pride is something that actually comes up with a lot of products, because a lot of people want to be seen as superior to their peers. And one of the ways they do that is buying information or products that sort of give them that idea that they are superior. So pride's an important one to remember. The last three, wrath. Wrath is the desire for revenge and vindication. It's justification driven. So if someone is very, very angry, or if someone has a primal desire of getting revenge for something, that is a deeply seated desire that you talk about in your copy. If they require vindication for something, like they're proving someone wrong, they are driving themselves to succeed because of a hurt in their past, it's anger, it's wrath that's motivating them. And if you tap into that, then you create a very powerful motivator for them. A good example of that would be bodybuilding type products or powerlifting type products. You notice that a lot of those products sell the whole, like, get back at her or him for dumping you because you were fat, or get back at the person who bullied you in high school. That desire for vindication, that desire for revenge, is one of the primary motivators for a lot of fitness products, and also for a lot of like secret products, where if someone is needs some sort of vindication for getting fired, then you can show someone how to get back at your boss. You can show someone how to get a better job at the same company, or something like that, whatever you have to do. Wrath is a very powerful motivator. Gluttony. Now, gluttony in the Catholic tradition just means you eat too much and consume too much, but the primal desire of gluttony is a combination of consumption, which just means they get addicted to consuming stuff. They like consuming whatever it is, if it's information, if it's food, if it's movies, like entertainment, whatever it happens to be. That consumption is addictive. But also it's included with comfort. This is different than ease, the desire for ease, which is sloth, but comfort is to be comfortable, to be content with where you're at. If that's a primary motivator for some people, then it's very, very powerful to sell that to them, that sort of idea of comfort once they purchase your product or service. Again, you don't see gluttony as often as a primary desire, or primal primary desire, but you can see it sometimes, and when it hits the nail on the head, it's extremely powerful. So keep an eye out for it. And the last one is envy. Envy is similar to pride and greed, but envy is the desire for better, rather than pride, which is the desire for superiority, and greed, which is the desire for more. Envy is the desire for better, because others are better than them. Better because they could do better, or they see other people doing better. Envy is the desire to be better than the people around them, kind of like that. Keeping up with the Joneses idea. Envy is a very powerful motivator as well. Now, if this seems super dark and super angry, or something that, dark psychology type stuff, it's really not. The primal desires are based in your emotional brain, and all of these things are simply emotions and simply things that don't really make sense logically and don't make sense in the sense of a civilized society. This is what's deep down in your brain. Somebody's idea of wrath, being angry about something, might be channeled into a positive body image, or it might be channeled into a positive life change with personal development. Somebody's desire for comfort might be channeled into buying stuff from IKEA or buying stuff from the Pottery Barn. It's just their desire, their core desire and the primal desire for what that thing is. So don't judge someone based on the fact that these are the quote unquote 7 deadly sins. They're just a really good way to remember what motivates people at a deep subconscious level. Let's go into some other things that are important to understand about primal desires. The first thing is something you'll probably remember from Tony Robbins if you follow any of his stuff. There are 6 core needs of humanity. The first 4 are the most important. So the first one is significance, the feeling of being a significant, unique human being. Like that your life matters, that your ego matters, and that you're not taken for granted. Significance is extremely important. Variety, the idea that you have choice, the idea that you have a variety of things to do and you're not stuck in a monotonous existence. Certainty, certainty meaning that you have some sort of solid foundation. You have something you can go back on that is always going to be the same no matter what. And the fourth one is love and connection. Feeling that connection with another human being, feeling loved and appreciated by another human being, and not feeling lonely or abandoned. Those first 4 are so critically important to every single human psychology that they will always have something that fulfills that need. They already have something that fulfills those 4 needs. Now, the problem is some people choose to fulfill those needs in the short term and sacrifice those needs in the long term because they don't think about the long term. An example would be someone who wants love and connection staying in an abusive relationship because they feel like that is the only person that they've ever found to be connected to. Maybe someone who has significance because of a job that they're in, but they hate that job. It tears the soul out of them, but they feel significant in that role. Variety, maybe they like traveling a lot, but they're not stable, and so they spend all their money on travel because they need this variety. That's also why people get addicted to drugs. Same thing with certainty. People need that certainty of what they're going to feel. So the important thing to know as a copywriter about those first 4 is that if you're selling a product that takes away from one of those 4 core needs, if you're trying to convince someone to buy your stuff, but it's going to take one of those core 4 needs away from them, then you're fighting an uphill battle. And if you're going to convince them that they are going to replace one of those core 4 needs with your product, then you have to sell them pretty hard on the fact that your thing will actually do the replacement for that intrinsic core need that they have. Now, the other 2, because I said 6, not 4, the other 2 needs are growth and contribution. Those are the needs that come after you've solidified the first 4 in a fulfilling, steady, positive way. Because you can only get growth and contribution when you have the first 4 worked out in a positive way. If you're getting your certainty from taking drugs all the time, you're not going to find a way to grow and contribute. So hopefully that makes sense. The first 4 are what you have to pay attention to as a copywriter. Now let's talk about the shadow of primal desires, which are primal fears. Primal fears are the 7 deadly sins and the opposite of their desires. So with greed, their desire was for more. Their primal fear would be lack and scarcity and not having enough. That is the primal fear for someone who's greed motivated. Sloth, interestingly enough, is waste. Their primal fear is to be fearful of what they're wasting because they're looking for ease. They're looking for shortcuts and hacks and things like that, finding out the easiest way to do things. What they're concerned about is waste. They're wasting their time. They're wasting their energy. They're wasting their money. They're wasting what they could use on something else. You'll hear this a lot on people who won't buy a product because they feel like it's not giving them the ease of use that they want, and they're afraid of wasting their time and money on it. Sloth is waste. The primal fear is waste. Lust, obviously, is loneliness and solitude. So if you are trying to strive for sex and love and connection, your primal fear is that you're going to die alone and that you are going to be solitary your entire life. So that fear is always sitting behind the primal desire of lust whenever it's a motivation. Pride, the primal fear is inadequacy and failure. So if they want to see themselves as superior to other people, that is their core desire, that's their primal desire, then their fear is feeling inadequate compared to others, of course, but inadequate on themselves as well, failing themselves, failing others, being seen as a failure by others, people that matter to them. That is the opposite of pride. That's the primal fear associated with pride. Wrath, the primal fear, is fear. So when someone is angry, when someone is trying to search for vindication or justification, and they're motivated by that, their primal fear is fear. They're afraid that they're not good enough. They're afraid that they're too afraid to do stuff. They're afraid that they are going to be found out as someone who's very, very scared and fearful. So again, it's weird to say that primal fear is fear, but if somebody's wrath motivated, then you're going to notice that they do a lot of things based on fear. And the next one is gluttony. And the primal fear of gluttony is discomfort and lack of choice. So if someone is motivated by their desire for comfort and their desire for consumption, then they're going to be scared of a lack of choice. They're going to be scared of something that looks uncomfortable because that's not their primary motivation. So if you portray a product that is supposed to, help them become more comfortable in the long run, but it's going to require some discomfort, then you're automatically competing against their primal desire with their primal fear. And it does result in a lot of lost sales on that one. Next one is envy. So envy, their primal fear is self-hatred and imposter syndrome. So if someone is envious of another person or another thing, or envious of a thing they don't have, they do not like themselves. They're looking at themselves and seeing themselves as inadequate, kind of like Up by Pride, but they're looking internally and they're seeing themselves that way already, and they're self-hating themselves and they're hating themselves. Imposter syndrome is another big way because they see themselves as a fake and everybody else is real. And so that envy of everyone being better than them and them being fake is a big primal fear for them. So hopefully those are good. You're going to have the notes on those, and the application of these big principles is what's key. So ask your questions, bring them up on the Q&A calls. We'll talk about the specific assignments and your specific ideas on those Q&A calls. All right, let's talk about the third pillar, market sophistication. Market sophistication is how many similar products your prospect has been told about before you show up. This means that your competitors, your indirect competitors, products from a company before that solve the same problem, who knows? Market sophistication is your prospect's awareness. Your prospect's sophistication to the similar products and services that are in the market before you. So let's talk about the different stages, and then we'll talk about the relevance of all those stages. So the first stage in market sophistication is you're first. You are the first person in the marketplace with the product that provides the solution to someone's problem. The first person in the marketplace that has the product or service that provides the solution to the person's problem. If you're first, your primary objective is to attract their attention and then capture their interest. And that's it. Attract their attention, capture their interest. Those are the only two things you need to do if you are first to market. Because obviously there's noise everywhere. You still have to attract their attention and capture their interest. But once you've done that, the rest is easy because you're first and you've got their interest and you're selling them the only thing that can solve their problem. So there are some ways to hack this, because obviously as a copywriter, you would be salivating if you were the first to market with a product that truly solves a problem that has no other solution yet. It'd be awesome. There are some ways to hack this in markets where you're not technically first. And one of those is to apply a current product to a brand new market. This is what Jay Abraham did. If you don't know Jay Abraham, he's responsible for over $9 billion worth of sales with over 500 different types of companies all across different industries. And he's regarded as one of the most legendary marketing consultants of our time. What he did to earn all of that money was he took a current product, which in his day was the Magalog style direct response concepts of measuring and sales letters and direct mail copy and things like that. He took those ideas out of the direct mail publishing world, which at that time was rather small, and applied them to a bunch of other businesses to attract leads and sales. It doesn't matter what they were. He applied those direct response principles to those businesses and just crushed it for them. He didn't change anything. He grabbed the stuff that other people were working on, like Gene Schwartz and all the Marty Edelson, the people who were in those publishing companies, and he took them and applied them to a different market and absolutely crushed it. That's a way of hacking your way into the first stage. And now, I don't know if he's a billionaire, but he's created several of them. The second way to do it, the second hack that you can use, is to reach the same market that your competitors and indirect competitors are reaching through a new medium, which means a new marketing channel. An example of that right now, currently, would be Snapchat. A lot of people are jumping on the Snapchat bandwagon because you're reaching the same types of markets for your products through a different medium that hasn't been as saturated yet. And it's a different way of delivering the message as well. Whereas a YouTube video, you have to sit there and watch through it and there's ads. A Snapchat is only 10 seconds long and it's individual to a specific person or a brand. So they're reaching the same market through a different new media marketing channel. That's one way to get to the first stage and start attracting people's attention and capturing their interest immediately. Now, the nice thing is Snapchat and other things like it continually come out all the time. The bad thing is sometimes, especially with technology, they don't end up going anywhere, like Blab. I'm sorry if you're a Blab person, but it's not going anywhere. The only people who like Blab are people who sell shit on Blab. That happens with technology everywhere. So be careful about jumping into a new medium, but don't be scared of jumping into a new medium because it can pay off like crazy. All right, next one is discover a new feature of the product that is applicable to the market. So if you're selling a product or a service and everybody's selling it in the exact same way, let's use something like a service like high-ticket coaching. I like to pick on this industry. So the high-ticket coaches who teach coaches how to sell high tickets to coaches are basically teaching each other the same stuff. How to create a high-ticket group coaching program, how to get more strategy sessions, how to do Facebook ads to get more people to your automated webinar to do Facebook ad or to do strategy sessions. If you discover a new feature of what you're training people that is applicable to the market, then you can stand out immediately and get back to the first stage. So an example of that would be if you sell high ticket coaching to coaches, you could say something like, the only way to get high ticket clients from Snapchat, the only way to get high ticket clients from direct mail, the only way to get qualified strategy sessions through cold calling, the only way to get people to watch your automated webinar from live events. Something to that effect. If you find a new feature of the product that's applicable to the market, sell it because they haven't heard it before. That's what most of your competitors aren't doing. They're not trying to find new angles for their own products to fit into the market. They're trying to figure out why their ads aren't converting when everybody else says the same thing they are. That's the first stage. So let's talk a little bit more about it. The first stage of market sophistication is typically at a third or fourth level market awareness. We'll talk about that when we talk about awareness, but keep that in mind. First stage equals third or fourth level awareness, and I'll explain why. So they don't know that a product exists yet to solve their particular problem. They know that a problem exists at the third stage, the third level of market awareness, but they have no solution for it. And they know that they have a desire, like something inside them. They can't really put words to it, but they have sort of this yearning, but they don't know that there's problems associated with that particular desire. An example of the first one, they don't know a product exists, is, gosh, I need to learn how to use Facebook ads for my personal training business. I don't think anybody teaches that. And all of a sudden your ad pops up and goes, actually, I teach that. You're like, okay, great. Now I am more aware, and you're the first person in my awareness for that. And you're at the number one stage of market sophistication. So the next one is they know a problem exists, but there are no solutions. So they know they have a problem. Like, gosh, I'm just not getting enough leads into my personal training business, but I don't know how to get more leads. I have no idea. And your ad pops up and says, hey, do you need leads in your personal training business? I have a program that shows you how to get them from Facebook. And you're like, oh, great, that's the perfect answer to my thing. First stage aware, or first stage sophistication right there, because you don't have competitors. At that point, obviously, if they did more market research, they would find more competitors, and your marketing would not be as effective anymore, because somebody would go find a competitor that says, I'll teach you how to do get leads for your physical training business on Facebook for only $1. Things like that. People will compete, and we'll talk about the different stages of sophistication as we move on. The third one is they know a desire exists, but not the problems, which means they're not thinking, oh gosh, I need more leads to get into my personal training business. I don't know how to get more leads. They're thinking, I would like to make more money from my personal training business, but I'm not really sure how to do that. And, I'm doing okay right now, but eventually I'm going to have to start earning more money. And when you come in at that market awareness level, you say stuff like, hey, do you want to earn more money as a personal trainer? And be like, yeah. Well, usually the best way to do that is to get more leads. And they're like, that makes sense. But the easiest way to get leads is to do some Facebook ads. And I'll teach you how to do those Facebook ads to get those leads so you can make more money. And the market goes, oh, great, that's perfect. Thank you so much. They were at a 4th level awareness or a 5th level awareness. And all of a sudden now they're at the first stage of sophistication because they have no idea that anything else exists. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have questions, write them down, bring them to the Q&A call. All right, let's talk about rules on the first stage. This is what you do if you are in the first stage of market sophistication. Be simple, be direct, and don't be fancy or overhypey. Right? You're going to scare them away if you try to be overly hypey in your headline when you're in the first stage of market sophistication. Don't try and jump to the 2nd or 3rd stage before it's there. You'll know when it's there because your competitors will start copying you. So, and then I'll tell you that in a second, actually, because that's what you're supposed to do first. But don't be fancy and don't be over hypey when you're in the first stage. You need to name the need or the claim that you're making in your headline. Name the need. Hey, do you want to make more money in your physical trainer business? Hey, do you need more leads in your physical trainer business? Or your personal trainer business? Hey, do you want to get more leads from Facebook or want to find out best ways to get leads? That's the need or the claim. I can help you get leads from Facebook. I can help you get more leads. I can help you get more money by attracting more leads. That's the claim. And then you expand the need or the claim in the body copy. Headline is the need and the claim, and then you use the body copy to explain things to everyone. Second stage, you are second into the market. Somebody beat you there, and now you need to figure out what's going on. You think, oh crap, well, John over here is teaching people how to sell, how to use Facebook ads to get personal training clients. I can't do it now. That's absolutely not true. What you do is you steal their attention and interest, and you do that by being bigger, better, and faster. So if they say something to the effect of, I will teach you how to get leads from Facebook by using Facebook ads, you say, I will teach you how to get leads from Facebook using Facebook ads for less than $1 a piece. I will teach you to do it in 7 days. I will teach you to do it in your local market so that nobody else can conquer you. Be bigger, better, and faster. One thing that is very important about the second stage is that you do not want to be cheaper. Do not use cheaper as a selling point unless your entire business model is built to handle it. Right? If you're a copywriter, you're a freelancer, you're writing for a client, and they are the low-cost provider, and they built their entire business around it, then you can use price. If they're not the low-cost provider, you will sink their business if you try to compete on price. So don't do it unless they're already built to handle it. Usually they're very savvy entrepreneurs and business owners if they know how to handle a low-price model, because it's hard. All right, the warning that I have to give you for the second stage is that the second stage escalates quickly because you're stealing your competitor's attention and interest, and other people are trying to enter the market because they see the market is rising, is better, there's multiple people in it, and they're stealing your stuff. So this happens very quickly, and you're going to move on to the third stage of market sophistication very quickly. The second stage, you can get away with enlarging your headlines and being bigger, better, and faster than your competitor for a little while, but eventually you guys start one-upping each other, and the headlines and everything you're trying to sell eventually just burns out. The audience doesn't like it anymore. So that's when you go to the third stage. The third stage is when the market is saturated, but your primary objective is to create a new mechanism to achieve the original desire. So if you're teaching people how to get personal training leads from Facebook, then, and somebody's saying, how to do it through Facebook ads, then you can say how to get personal training leads from Facebook without spending money on ads. You're like, oh, that's interesting. How do I do that? How to get personal training leads from Facebook and make Facebook pay for the ads. Okay, let's figure that one out. New mechanisms. Now, one caveat about this is that the market must be built on a constantly renewing desire. So when you picked out that primal desire, is it constant or is it a fad? Is it going to go away in a little bit? So when you're thinking about entering a market that's at the third or fourth stage, you have to ask this question to yourself. Is this going to be around for a while? And if so, what are the forces that are actually driving it? What are the desires underneath everything? Underneath all the crap? That using the core needs and using the primal desires to your advantage when you understand your target market is a huge, huge advantage for you in the third and fourth stage. So make sure to do that research. So this is what a fad is. A fad is lots of excitement, but it dies out when it gets saturated. Right now, we're seeing a phenomenon with Pokemon Go. In the next few weeks and months, we're going to find out whether or not it's a fad or if it's a trend. If Pokemon Go is something like just new app of the week and somebody else comes out with something better, or everybody stops playing it, or something happens where they start charging people to play it, who knows? Maybe it's a fad and it dies out. Or is it a trend? Is this something that is going to keep going? Is augmented or virtual reality something that is going to keep growing and getting bigger? Is it evergreen? It's constantly being reinvented. One rule that I use, this is what I learned from my mentor, Ryan Levesque, is the 50-50 rule. Was it around 50 years ago and will it be around in 50 years? If not, how will it transform? You might think, well, okay, Pokemon Go was not around 50 years ago, but Pokemon was around 20 years ago. Collectible card games, collectible games in general, have been around for way over 50 years, and they will continue to be around for the next 50 years. So that is how you find a trend and use a trend versus looking at a fad and being caught up in a fad. And that's one way to help your analysis when you're in the third stage. So some examples of a evergreen trend marketplace is weight loss. People are always going to want to lose weight. More specifically, people are always going to want to look sexier. Right now, that's weight loss. Back in the 30s or 40s, maybe earlier than that, it was actually weight gain, especially for women, because women were too skinny according to the cultural standards at the time. But the underlying trend was look better, feel sexier, be healthier. The next one is money. People are always going to want more money or be more secure with the money that they have. So money is a constant. Relationships. Human beings will always value relationships forever. They will always do it. It might change. Some people might start dating robots, but relationships will always be there. They will always need that love and connection. Use the core needs that I told you about and use the primal desires to find the evergreen trends. And I just threw one up there like haircuts. Everyone's always going to need a haircut. Hair is not going to stop growing. That's an example of evergreen stuff. So here's the rule on the third stage. When you're writing a headline, when you're writing a hook, whatever you're writing for the copy, you start with the mechanism and then you move to the promise. The mechanism is how to get leads from Facebook without paying for Facebook ads. And then you do a promise. I will teach you how to get 7 to 10 leads every single week on autopilot without paying for ads. Pinky promise. That's the rule. 3rd stage, mechanism, then promise. 4th stage, bigger and badder mechanisms. This is the same as the 2nd stage in that you take your competitors' ideas and you make them bigger and badder by enlarging the claims. Again, you start to see the self-defeating cycle here, but when you're in it, you have to do this in order to compete. So there are ways to get out of this rat trap and kind of like control the market. There's better ways to do that. But when you're in the 4th stage and you're actually competing, whether or not you're a freelancer or you're a business, your primary objective is to be the better mousetrap. Your objective is to be the best solution at the time based on your mechanisms and how you accomplish the problem, or how you solve the problem, sorry. So steal their successful headlines, steal their promises, and then enlarge the promise, expand on it, and make it better, make it easier, make it faster, whatever it happens to be. Again, try to avoid cheaper at all costs. People will try. There's really easy ways to go against cheaper. You basically say, well, you either want Walmart quality or you want Lexus quality. What do you want? It's a quality thing. People understand that cheap equals bad. So this is the cycle. 3rd and 4th stage will continue to turn over until one of these 3 things happens. Either the market collapses and the demand disappears or doesn't believe your claims anymore. This is what happens when either the claims have been overdone and people just don't believe them. You start seeing some issues with internet marketing in this stage. And the only thing that keeps the market going is an addictive nature or a really, really bad primal desire that's driving the market, or a constant influx of new people into the market. You start noticing that as well. A market would collapse if the demand disappears, if the supply gets too large. This happened in one of my mentors' businesses in the Scrabble tile market, Scrabble tile jewelry, where he made jewelry out of Scrabble tiles, and it was very specific and handmade. But then a bunch of companies over in China saw that there was money to be made and started mass manufacturing them, and the market entirely died because the supply was too high. The demand disappeared. This also happens when people don't believe the claims anymore. When you say lose 30 pounds in 30 days, people are like, yeah, right. If you say lose 30 pounds in 30 days because this primal diet and look this celebrity did, they're like, you know what? 99 out of 100 people aren't going to believe you, and the one that believes you is the one that believes everything. So that's a market that's collapsing. Big companies can control the market through force. This is what happens when you're in a corporate market, an enterprise market, or someone who has a very big stake in staying the market leader in a particular market, where they're going to force all other competitors and startups out of their marketplace through sheer force, either legal force using patents or legalities, trademarks, things like that, or monetary force, where they're using their advertising budgets to make it so expensive to advertise that startups and new businesses can't come in. This will happen in very big markets. So there's ways to get around it, which we'll talk about in a second. Actually, this 3rd one here, the market splinters. But know that if you're entering a market where your client is trying to sell something where there's a giant company that's pricing everyone out, then you need to have a talk with your client and say, look, this is a battle you're not going to win unless you're willing to toss $50 million in marketing every year. So the 3rd thing that can happen in this 3rd and 4th stage cycle is that the market splinters into sub-niches and starts over. So let's talk about the weight loss market real quick. When the weight loss market first started, let's say it was sexier to look thinner than the average person typically looks. Therefore, the weight loss demand is there. Once the market has gone through these stages of sophistication, as in the first stage is lose weight, the second stage is lose weight faster, the third stage is lose weight without going hungry, and the 4th stage is lose weight without going hungry faster. Once the market has gone through those 4 stages, it has 2 choices. It can either expand into the 5th stage, which we're going to talk about in a later training, in a later content, because it's its own separate training. It can expand into the 5th stage, or it can splinter into a sub-niche and start over. So the weight loss market went through all 4 stages: lose weight without being hungry faster. And then all of a sudden it started over at stage 1 when someone went, women, here's how to lose weight. Women, here's how to lose weight faster. Women, here's how to lose weight without losing your curves. Here's how to lose weight without using your curves faster. And the market goes on and on. Women in North Dakota, women under the age of 25, women over the age of 45, brides to be, all those different types of sub niches. You can start to think of them on your own. The market will splinter and splinter and splinter into these sub niches. It is possible to go too deep into a sub niche. If you're trying to market to only model airplane owners in Montana, you're probably not going to have an 8-figure business. Now, if you're trying to market to only oil rig owners in Montana, you're probably going to have an 8 or 9-figure business. So it all depends on the market. But do keep in mind, it is possible to niche too much. And if you're a copywriter or you're working with clients, or if you're a business working on your own stuff, then be careful of niching too far when you're trying to achieve scale and profitability. Let's talk about this stage. We'll talk for later. And the last one. So we're an hour and 20 minutes in right now. I'm going to go through market awareness again, go through this training multiple times. I'm going to try to put timestamps down where the individual pillars start so you can go back and forth. And the notes will be in here so you'll be able to review everything and ask questions on the question and answer, right? Write them down, bring them to the Q&A, and we'll get them answered for you, because this is stuff that you must get in order to complete the course that you're doing right now with me. And also if you want to write good copy that converts, because I could literally teach you just this, and you can go out and write copy, better copy than 98% of most people who call themselves copywriters. So this is that important to understand. Everything else is mechanics and tactics. This stuff that I'm teaching you right now is so important that you could scribble a note on a napkin and hand it to your prospect. And if you use these 4 things, they would probably buy your stuff. That's how important it is. So let's talk about market awareness. The prospect's personal awareness of their problem and the solutions available. Their awareness of their problem and the solutions available. So when you're writing an advertisement, the reason I wrote this down, because it is very important. This is a quote from Eugene Schwartz, who wrote Breakthrough Advertising and was one of the greatest copywriters who ever lived. Your ad always begins with your market and leads the market inevitably into your product. So with this last pillar, I want to remind you that the understanding of your market, where they are, how aware they are, what they're experiencing in their sophistication level, the market sophistication level, what their primal desires, primal fears, and core needs are, and who they are and why they are the way they are, is so important to your ad that I can't emphasize it enough. So I'll stop being a dead horse. Let's talk about the first level of market awareness, level 1, the most aware, and also what I call product aware. So this is when your prospect knows your product, knows what it does, and knows that he wants it or she wants it. They just need to see a deal or an offer. This is a very, very easy sell. This is an example of this would be if you know for a fact that you want to buy the newest Honda Civic, and you walk into the Honda Civic dealer and you say, I want the newest model of the Honda Civic in red, please. What kind of deal do you have? If you're sitting at home and you know for a fact that you want a Honda Civic in red, and you see an ad in the paper that says, today only, discounts on Honda Civics, on red Honda Civics at this dealership. That is a level 1 ad. That is a level 1 prospect. They are most aware. They know what you want. Now, in the context of information publishing, you see that Frank Kern does this all the time. And I'll talk about Frank in just a second. But he sells his product at a discount. He sells his old products all the time. That's one of his main offers. And usually he uses them as tripwires into his new offers. So smart guy, but very easy to do. because he's built a brand. They know your product. They know what it does. They know that it wants it. They just need to see the deal or see the offer. So super easy. Eugene Schwartz actually doesn't think that copywriters who do this should get paid very much, but I disagree for this reason, because there are a lot of people out there who do not do the basic stuff like this. They have a list of people who just need to see an offer, but they don't market to them. They're ready to buy, but they don't market to them. This is what Frank Kern does with his $10,000 a month clients. He basically just goes and finds businesses who are not marketing to their level 1 prospects and actually markets to the level 1 prospects. It's very simple. It's easy. Frank Kern built his entire consulting practice on doing this because he sends out a couple emails talking about vault sales and fire sales and all sorts of stuff and makes the client a bunch of money, and they all go home happy, but it's easy stuff. Most people just aren't doing it. Now, who this is most valuable for are people who are not promoting properly. And usually that's people with 6 and 7 figure businesses. So if they own a 6-figure business, if they own a 7-figure business, they're not as sophisticated as someone who owns an 8 or a 9-figure business or a 10. Because in order to get to an 8-figure business or a 9-figure business, you have to maximize your value and you have to promote properly. If you're not doing that, you're probably at 6 and 7. So if you want clients who are at that level, or if you want to work with businesses that are at that level, remember this. This is key. Knock on wood, right? Level 2. Level 2 is when your prospect is solution aware. They understand that there is a solution to their problem. They know of the product, but they don't want it yet. They're not completely aware of what the product does. They're not convinced on how well it does it, or they haven't been told how much better it is than the other options. There's a reason. They're sitting on the fence, or they are not buying for a specific reason. But if you answer that reason and answer that objection, then they will buy because they know there's a solution. That's level 2. Level 2 is also pretty easy. You just have to find out what those objections are. And the best way to do that is like what I talked about earlier in the video, interviewing them, surveying them, figuring out what those reasons are that they're not buying. There are 7 ways to do this in order to build the desire enough to purchase your product. The first one is to reinforce their desire for the product. And you can do that in 4 ways. Association, meaning you associate your product or the owning of your product with something that is valuable and beneficial to them. Again, going back to the beginning of the video, associating it with a brand or a person or a celebrity or an institution or something like that is beneficial to them or that they enjoy or that they identify with can reinforce that desire enough that they will go purchase the product. The second one is example. You show an example of the product in use, specifically built to counter an objection. So let's say the person says, I don't think this is going to work on my fishing trip because it's going to get wet. Well, you drop it in a lake. You show an ad of them dropping into the lake, pulling it out and using it. You're like, look, it works when it's wet. And you're like, okay, cool. That's all I needed to hear. And then they go buy it. Sensory sharpening. This is a very Eugene Schwartz style quote, but the sensory sharpening is essentially giving them an ownership experience through tactile sensation. That you describe the use of the product in a way that they can see, touch, feel, smell, hear, whatever, one of those things. So an example would be for velvety soft skin, use Dove. That's just a really big example. For an information product selling fitness, you could say, feel the sweat dripping, feel the fat drip from your body and sweat. I don't know, that's really gross, but the idea of sensory sharpening to basically make them feel what the ownership experience is like. Illustration is the last one, where you are describing what it would be like to own the product. Not quite in the sensory sharpening, but describing owning it, like you're walking down the street and you get into your brand new, beautiful Bentley. You illustrate what it's like to own the product. A second task that you can use, or second option you can use in order to sell the product to a level 2 person is to sharpen the image in their mind of what that product does. You either describe the physical attributes of the product in detail, or you describe the mechanism through which it solves the problem. So physical attributes would be, has a wonderful rubber grip so that your hands don't get tired when you're working. Or mechanism would be, uses serrated edges instead of clean edges so that you don't have to sharpen it as often and will cut twice as fast. That's the type of description and sharpening image that you want for those products. The next one is extending the image. If you extend the image of owning the product, you can show where. So let's say you're selling a fishing pole and you sell it, and the fishing pole is great for on the lake, and that's how you sell it. But someone's like, you know what? I don't live near a lake. I live near the ocean. Then you'd say, well, actually, look at this. They use it in the ocean too. It's perfect for the ocean. Use it here. And then when, things like that. This shirt is for work, but look, you can untuck it and go out to the club because it still looks good. When, extending the image. Introduce new proof. New proof is finding new research about your product and how it works and why it's better. Endorsements from celebrities or people who are valuable. Specific endorsements, indirect endorsements, things like that. I had one woman who I coached to build her internet marketing and like publishing side of things, but she was originally a handbag salesperson, and she sold a ton of handbags simply because Reese Witherspoon used her handbag in the movie Legally Blonde and crushed it. Didn't get a direct endorsement from Reese Witherspoon until later, but when she saw that and took the picture of it from the paparazzi, used it in all of her advertising and crushed it because celebrity sells a lot of stuff. Endorsements are good. And news. If your stuff comes out in the news or if something relevant comes out in the news, you can use that as new proof and new ads. It's always look for new proof. People always need more proof. You can never have too much. 7, so announcing a new mechanism about your product. So if you are constantly improving your product for something or your service for something, you can use the new mechanisms that you create to drive people over the fence. And one way to do that is to announce the new mechanism when the feature itself makes the product better in some way, as in it was good before, but now it's even better. Like this computer Apple does this all the time. This computer was amazing beforehand, but now the resolution's better. It's got more pixels or whatever. With the new features making the thing better, that's a good enough reason for a lot of people to buy stuff. The next one is announcing a new mechanism that fixed an old problem. So if you're selling, again, let's go back to Apple Computer, you can say, this version had problems with the operating system, but now all of those problems are fixed. So you should buy this one. Or, these old headphones were great for listening, but they didn't have a microphone in them to talk. But now we put a microphone on the headphones, so buy this thing. Things like that. If you can announce a new mechanism that fixes an old problem, do that. That helps drive people off the fence as well. Changing the image that someone associates with the product itself is a stage 5 sophistication problem. We're going to go over that when we talk about the 5th stage later in the course. Changing the image is an extremely powerful way to recapture a market. And I don't want you to brush over it, but for right now, all you need to know is the first 6 before this one. So let's talk about level 3, market awareness. The prospect knows or recognizes immediately that he has the problem he has, but he doesn't know there are products to solve it. So he is problem aware. He knows that there's something wrong. I gave examples earlier in the call, but again, we can go back to them, the personal trainer example. He knows he has a problem. He's like, I need more leads into my business. I know I have that problem because I'm not getting enough sales and I'm not getting enough leads, and so I need more leads. That's my awareness of my problem. So you have to find the vague desire or problem that your target market is experiencing, which is maybe it's, hey, I need more leads, or maybe it's I need more sales, or maybe it's I'm not making enough money, or my clients keep leaving, or I can't retain people, or whatever it is. All over the place. Find that vague desire or problem and crystallize it for them in your advertising. So if you say, hey, Are you experiencing cash flow problems in your personal training business? And they're like, yeah, definitely. I'm like, it's probably because you're running out of leads, huh? I'm like, definitely. I run out of leads all the time. You're like, what if there was a way to get more leads consistently that resulted in getting a client 1 out of 4 times? They'd be like, that would be awesome. I don't have to talk to 10 people to get 1 client. Exactly. Buy my shit. So there's 3 needs for you as the writer to appeal to a level 3 awareness prospect. You need analysis of the marketplace, which I just taught you to do in this video. You need intuition. You need personal intuition. So some people are just naturally empathetic. They're naturally people who can get into the mindset of another person and understand how they tick. Some people are not like that. It's hard for them to do it. I'm one of those people. It's not super easy for me to jump into another person's head and think like them. How I do it is by asking why. I ask why over and over and over again until I get an answer that makes sense. And then I verify it using the research and the interviews that I have. So trust but verify if you have intuition, and research and verify if you don't have intuition. The third thing is verbal creativity. So this is something that is practiced specifically. This is why we write the daily assignments. This is why we do the weekly assignments. This is why we do the hot seats. Because in order to be a copywriter, you have to be able to write, and you have to be able to creatively express the issues at hand in a way that hasn't been heard before, but is still very clear to the person when they read it. And that requires creativity. So there's